What is up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit, and today we are going to be doing a recap of the May Melee Prelims. Fantastic Sunday of action that we had. We had a great match early in the morning. The Fusion and the Dragons had one of the best matches I've seen in a long time. The rest of the matches were kind of okay. Some teams showed up that we didn't think were going to. There were some upsets, all kinds of good stuff going on. Before we dive deep into it, though, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. Thank you to all of you guys that have been hanging around, coming and checking me out. It's greatly appreciated. Everybody that's new, that's checking us out for the first time, thanks for stopping by. I do Overwatch League content anywhere from 2 to 3 times a week, depending on what's going on. You know, if there's tournaments or extra stuff or news dropping or anything like that. But thanks for stopping by. And if you could hit a like, hit a subscribe, that would be fantastic. Hit the alert bell and you'll know when I got stuff coming up. And we're going to have some stuff coming up this week because we got the tournament finals coming up at the end of the week, starting on Thursday, going through the weekend. And then, of course, we're going to have a break and we're going to do some stuff during that break. Don't worry. But let's get into the prelim matches. I'm not going to talk too much about the other matches that happened on the weekend that got us to this point. It was pretty exciting, though. I will say that. I did have a little recap and preview of the prelim matches. So, going in, I had picked Philly, Chengdu, Washington, and San Francisco. Or Houston. I'm sorry. Yeah, that didn't happen. Thank God for Chengdu. But that's okay. We got some fun matches and some eye-opening experiences really for some teams that we really weren't expecting. One of them being my team, who played fantastic this weekend. After getting absolutely curb stomped by the Shock, they kind of figured some stuff out, and maybe that was the slap that they needed to get them going. Because they looked like a different team from the beginning to the end of the weekend. And Toronto showed up, too, this week. It was fantastic to get here. But let's start with APAC before I bother you with my Mayhem fandom. Thought about, just doing a whole episode of me in a Mayhem jersey and a hula skirt, just doing that, but it's a early season tournament. I'm not going to get that crazy yet. Maybe if the finals are in Hawaii, that's a different story. I will do that for a long time. But let's talk about the APAC matches, because this is where we had the more compelling, the most compelling match, one of the best matches in any kind of pressure format that we've had in a long time. Except for a couple of those Dragons Dynasty matches that we had last year during the tournament thing that they just kind of threw up during the COVID thing. Yeah. Words today. They're difficult. But so this match, going into this match, I give you guys my thoughts on it. I thought Philadelphia was right now the better team. They were playing better, playing more cohesive. Their tank line looked better. Just every aspect looked better except for maybe a couple of guys here and there. One of them being, Lip was playing really well, and I thought Izayaki is fantastic. The Dragons showed up. Let's just put it that way. They started off by beating the Fusion on the on control on Nepal. They looked so much better than the Fusion here. I didn't really know what to expect from Shanghai because they looked so mediocre and uncoordinated and all that stuff. And Philadelphia looked the exact opposite. Shanghai came out and they were just going at them, and it was fantastic to see Shanghai come back. Now, Philadelphia, it was close. This whole match was close all the way through, minus a couple of instances where Philadelphia just laid the wood to them. And it's also a map type that Shanghai really needs to work on, for sure, because they looked absolutely abysmal on Eichenwald, and Havana was just Philadelphia kicking them. They destroyed them on that. They pretty much did that on Eichenwald too, but Shanghai came out and they were good on the control and the 2CP map. Well, I guess it was a draw. Well, we'll give that was a kind of odd map Volskaya plays out sometimes. You think a team's going to roll, and they go in, and then they have a time bank that's just like crazy, and then the other team just holds up. And that even happens in ranked games or quick play or when you're playing it. Volskaya is one of those that, yeah, we got this. And then you're like, why are we still trying to get in the door? You know, it felt like one of those matches. One thing that happened with this match is I think Fate and Void played better than they've played all year together. That was one of the key factors. And it wasn't that Mono and Hoppa had moments where he was kind of a little off. I'm not going to lie. He had moments where he was a little off, but I don't think it wasn't him necessarily. I think it was the constant pressure that was being put on him from the Dragons. I think that they were just trying to get him out of his game because I felt like they felt that he was the weakest point. And they also were all over Alarm and Toby in this. They were relentless in pursuing that back line. And Lip and Fleta were just playing like they did last year, which is something that I wanted to see too, that they didn't do previously in their matches. Obviously, they had a couple of matches against like Guang Zhao, who's terrible, so that doesn't really count. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. It just was. They came into this match where all the stuff was on the line, all the cliches, use them for this match, and they took it to Philadelphia in ways I didn't think that anyone would do currently, just because Shanghai hadn't been doing that. Philadelphia, though, they still played lights out for 90% of this match. There was just a couple of times where, you know, they had to rely on Carpe to clutch, and he couldn't do everything. So, I mean, him and Alarm were doing their best, and honestly, people were giving Rascal a bunch of crap. They knew what Rascal was going to do, and the thing is Izzyaki was on top of it the whole time. I think on Gibraltar, the last map, there was one point where he just slept him anytime he saw any kind of blink, and he was nailing him. He misses a sleep here or there, we could be talking about a different match. But the play in this game was just unreal. I love it when there is playoff Overwatch. It reminds me of like hockey, where people who don't understand hockey tune into playoff hockey because it's a different game. It's a different speed, there's urgency, all that stuff. When Overwatch has that as an esport, it's one of the best ones to watch because there are so many components and things that can happen. Yeah, there are in every esport, but guys can go off and then all of a sudden somebody else does something that's incredible and just turns the tide when you thought everything was lost. It's a beautiful game when there's stuff on the line. It is I love it when there's not, but when you watch it at its highest form, like in this match, there's no game that beats it, in my mind, competitively. But the Dragons won, so they're going to Hawaii. Or, I'm sorry, they're playing in the finals. They're not actually going to Hawaii. They're doing it from Korea. So the Dragons are in. The other match, now Chengdu, remember when I was saying, Prophet's going to do some things. Gesture's going to do some things, but they don't have enough right now to take on Chengdu. And that's really what happened. Gaga and Elsa were fantastic. Their support lines were great. Leave was just an animal in this match, too. And so was Jimmy. Didn't really see Jinmu. Prophet did do things, and he did reach a milestone. 5,000, 5,000 final blows. Amazing. The dude's amazing. He is a legend in this league. But even everything that he could do could not pull them out of this match. It got close at times, but I never felt like Seoul was going to win this match. And a lot of it was Gaga and Elsa, who's been stepping up his game, really. Leave proved and has been proving all of this the first month of the season that why people were talking about him last year, and he didn't really perform or anything like that. He didn't have a main tank. You know, you think main tank, it's a ripple effect, and one of the things that a bad main tank play, and it's not that Ameng was terrible, He actually played in this match, which I was concerned about because they threw in like the old team for the first control map, but they won. So, I mean, okay, but what my point was, when you have a complete main tank like Gaga, their space is just fantastic, especially if you're playing Tracer or any of the heroes that Leave's been playing. It just opens up so much for you to be able to do and show off your talent, and he was able to do that in this match, and I think that was one of the deciding factors. Tank play and Leave. They just, and their supports are playing better than I thought they were going to play. I thought it was kind of a question. I thought they were kind of okay. Well, maybe a little bit better than okay. I just thought other teams had better supports than they did, including Soul. But they did Soul. They did Soul things in this match. There were moments when Gesture was feeding his brains out. Prophet was off in the corner doing whatever Prophet does, getting a 2K that meant nothing after a team fight was over. You gotta call guys out like that. He's my favorite player, but every once in a while, the numbers get flashy. He tries to clutch something out, but for the majority of the fight, he was off doing something else. It feels like, whether it's 1v1ing a Tracer when he should be attacking the back line, or scurrying around somewhere else doing something else. It just gets, it's just not a good look, and you end up losing. Fitz played like Fitz does. Consistent. There were a couple times where he got caught out too. Chengdu's good. Let's just go with that. I just like the way that they've been playing all year long. And this match showed that they are, one of the best teams in APAC. Seoul is Seoul. They're in Never Never Land, Soulville, Soul Land, whatever you want to call it. Life is like a box of Dynasty. You never know what you're going to get. You got some good Soul. You got everything in this one. You got the candies that you liked in the box, and you got the really shitty orange cream ones too. Unless you like those, then you're weird. But anyway, I just want to see Soul put together in a normal meta situation. Just a complete match against a good team. They do well. They did well last year, sure. But there are moments when they did their thing. It was on that last patch in that meta. Earlier in the season, they would lose to, Chengdu, who was not good last year, lose to Hangzhou, who was not good last year. And then, since everybody got into these tournaments, especially over there when there was only 7 teams, they would do something weird, and they would beat Guangzhou, who was good, and then take Shanghai to 5 maps out of nowhere. I want consistency from this team, and this is something that, I've been screaming about for 2 years now with them. But Chengdu punched their ticket. Them and Shanghai are going. Now, folks, the fun begins. We talk about, well, the fun was there. The fun matches, actually, if you really want to get down to it. Now we talk about Upset City, otherwise known as the bottom of the bracket where the Dallas Fuel were in. Even though they shouldn't have been upsets, but without a hit scan player, kind of an upset. Especially the first match that they had. So we talked about that really quick. Let's talk about the matches themselves. The first match was Florida and Toronto, and Florida just shut the door on them early. They were just, much like San Francisco played Florida. Florida's a good team. They're just not on the level of the Shock. The same thing happened in this match. Toronto's a good team. I think they're better than I and other people have given them credit for, but they're not on Florida's level yet. Florida came into the match. They were 1-1. They had to win their last match. And then to finish the seeding out, they had to watch and see what Atlanta did with the Shock. And they ended up with Toronto, which it kind of worked out in their favor, really. Because I think that they got a first-round match that they had that was winnable. And to be honest, it felt like they focused more on Washington than Toronto, even though they beat Toronto pretty handily. There was no point in this match where you thought Toronto was going to come around. Some of the fights were close. A couple of the maps were close. But in the end, Florida just always had the extra to win the map. And something that we saw in this match was the start of a theme for Sunday was OG played really, really well. OG was just... There's something about this guy. I don't know if he didn't play in enough situations. Yeah, he played on the Gladiators last year, but they were a mess. I don't think it was necessarily him. And when he's on Dallas, he didn't play in any pressure matches. When he played in pressure matches, if you look, when he played in a pressure match with Dallas, it was at that homestand where he went fucking off. And even in a couple of the play-in things and the stuff that with the Gladiators, he never really looked terrible. But I just get this feeling that when the pressure's on, he plays really well. And he did all weekend long. And he was just overmatching Sato at times. Just with ult timing and when he was playing Monkey, knowing when to dive, doing all the things, and getting critical picks. Like I said, using his ultimates at the right time. There were times, though, where he was off doing OG things. You know, you're watching the match, and all of a sudden you see the outline of the Monkey 4 miles away from everybody else. They're like fucking around in the back line, and there's nobody with him. There were a couple times like that. But all in all, Florida took it to Toronto. But I do want to say one thing about Toronto before we move on to the next match. Toronto played better than I thought they were going to play. They went 3-1. They look good. They have a core. They look like a team that's going to make some noise. I mean, they made it into the first tournament. Gladiators didn't. Atlanta didn't. Teams that we had across the, most people across the board had better than Toronto, except for a hot take guy somewhere that had Toronto third or something weird. But they proved to me that this team baseline is pretty good. Now, we can talk about how good teams are in this stage or in May or for the May Melee Prelims and the tournament all we want. But the one thing is, guys, there's a patch that's out there. If you play the game, you know what's going on with it. It's, they nerfed Reinhardt. They gave Orisa a shorter cooldown on Halt. You know what that means in this league? You buff Orisa and you nerf Reinhardt, you're going to get double shield. But there's also hero pool things coming up. So Toronto could be a team to watch. If they get a meta that fits them perfectly, they could be a scary team. And there could be some of these teams that get really screwed by that. But we'll talk about that next week when we get all of the details and the finalities on what's going to happen in the next the June Joust prelims. I guess it goes all the way through the whole tournament too. The hero pool situation. I'm not a fan of it this year. I've said that, but it is what it is. If they want to mix the meta up, that's their issue. I really liked where the meta was at and stuff in the first stage. I'm going off on a tangent, guys. Sorry. We did have map specific things going on. We have teams that are trying different stuff. Some out of necessity, some out of desire to try something different and play a different way. I don't like the hero pool this year. Last year, I thought it was it was a good year to try and throw it in there because you had a lot of issues going on. Anyway, you might as well try something. I don't find it necessary this year. But that aside, Florida moves on to face Washington. Then the next match, we had our first upset. Dallas absolutely smokes San Francisco. Now, I could see a world where Dallas beats San Francisco. Not this way, though. I'm sorry. And I've been on the Dallas train all year long. I've said, guys, stop with the Dallas is trash thing. I said it since their roster came out. This team should be vying for championships and tournament wins all year. Then Xe left, and I backed down a little bit. I said, that doesn't mean they're a bad team. I want to see them get a hit scan player. But in the meantime, after week 1, and they had their ups and downs, but they've been working on these comps, these Doomfist and Sombra, and some of this other stuff they got going on. The one thing that is driving them right now isn't necessarily the comp per se. It's fucking Fearless is a god. That dude, he absolutely ate Super for lunch this whole match. He was on fire. Yes, some of their comps worked well, and San Francisco wasn't ready for that. But the main driving force was Fearless. Fearless doing things. And, Fielder stepped up his game, too, in this, which I was... In the situations that I saw him, was really paying attention. There were a lot of times where he was saving people with, hitting crucial sleep darts, and San Francisco looked a mess. I'm going to back down on they're cocky. I might have to start saying that it's not cockiness. They're not as good as they were, or everybody's just as good or better or stepped their game up, because they didn't look like the same team. They destroyed Florida. They got taken to 3-2 by Atlanta, who they should, in most instances, beat handily, like they beat Florida. And then Dallas 3-0s them. And I'm not taking anything away from Dallas in this. Dallas smacked them in the face and just kept throwing punches. And San Francisco had no answer. Stryker did not look like Stryker. The Super looked off. Choi was making mistakes. Their FD God was okay. Twilight was the best player they had in there, in my opinion. Violet looked okay. They keep wanting to put Violet on hit scan. I guess Glisser doesn't play. There are reports, though, that I've seen through the rumor mills and whatnot that Glisser might be going to Dallas. So maybe they sat him out for this because they're working on contract things, or Dallas can't announce anything, or he's actually in limbo and they have to have Violet play McCree. But why don't you just have Stryker play McCree? I don't know. I think Krusty's out-Krustying himself this year a little bit. But I also think that teams have stepped it up. And I'm going to give props to Rush, too. He said we're going to do some different stuff and change the meta up and all this kind of stuff before the season. Everyone's like, oh, God, it's Wizard Hyun talk. Here we go. We're better than you think. I thought they were good. But the comps were aside. Dallas played fantastic, and San Francisco just was not ready for Dallas. There are a lot of questions I got about San Francisco right now. They can't handle things that aren't handed to them. If you put Sombra in there, that's insta-rage for their main tank, who just loses his mind and focus. Same thing happened last year and the year before, because if you remember, during GOATS, he complained about Sombra all year long. And last year, anytime they played Sombra, dude got tilted. And that's a big issue. And the first person, if I was a Sombra, the first person I would hack would be Super. Just get him crunched. Just mauling from the start. Because once you start doing that, and you're looking for the Sombra, and fuck the Sombra and all that, you're not thinking of what you're supposed to be doing. And I think that's what's happening with Super on occasion. But there are a lot of questions I have. I don't have any questions for Dallas except for how good are they going to be when they get a hit scan player and they can play McCree, or they can play Widow, or play Hanzo, or play some of these other things that... Well, actually, they play a little bit of Hanzo now, so I can't really say that. With Sparkle playing a decent Tracer, and if you want to run McCree and you want to run a regular comp, say you get Glister or whatever, that puts you in a good spot, man. They kicked everybody to the curb this weekend, and we'll talk about the next match in a minute. But, goddamn, Dallas... Thank you for proving me right. I picked San Francisco, and I went, what did I go? I got one team in. I got Chengdu in. I'm okay with not getting in the other teams. I'm fine with that. Except for Philly. I really wanted Philly to go. I thought Philly was better than everyone gave them credit for anyway. I keep saying that, but I hate it when people look at talent and they're like trash, and you know they're not. Which is Dallas in a nutshell. And their coaching matters, guys. For the love of God, coaching matters. But Dallas did their thing here. They beat San Francisco. Didn't think it was going to happen, but Dallas did everything they needed to do. Fearless is the best main tank in the league. Fight me on that, and you're not going to win. He was an absolute difference maker in this, even against Super I don't think it would have mattered if Smurf played more or whoever. That was the difference in this match from a basic standpoint. Fearless was better than anything that San Francisco could do, which opened up all the other aspects of what Dallas was doing in this match. So let's move on to the next round. All right, guys. So we have Florida taking on Washington. And my boys, they came through. They beat the Washington Justice, who I expected to beat Florida in this. They beat them fairly soundly. They looked like they were in control most of the way. Oj played out of his mind, and so did BQB, and Yaki made some big plays. Gangnam Jin made some big plays. There were occasions where Gargoyle got caught out and things like that, but that's neither here nor there. In the end, Florida was better than Washington today. I think Oj, like I had said earlier, has become this kind of a go-to guy in a pressure situation, which is fantastic. He did weird stuff again, but, you know, when it mattered, he made big plays. And BQB continues to do the same thing for this team. He saved them quite a few times. There were a couple of team fights where they very well could have lost in crucial moments to Washington, and BQB bailed them out. And also Gangnam Jin bailed them out. Now, as far as Washington goes in this, Mag didn't play terrible, but they were focusing on him. And they were also focusing on the back line, and they kind of let Decay and some of the other guys do what they do. Jerry had a fantastic match, I thought. He looked really good. But I think Florida's main focus was take out the supports and control Mag. And it seemed to have worked really well in this. Bebe had some moments where he looked pretty good. He also had some moments where he was just getting crapped on. Same goes for Closer. Today was a day of the Mayhem playing better. I think this could be an ongoing thing between these two teams, back and forth. One match you have Florida winning. You know, it's going to be kind of a rivalry, but not like a spirited rivalry, as far as I know. I was happy they won because I was pissed from last year losing in the playoffs when I thought we had a shot to go further than we did. But that whole thing happened, and we're not going to talk about that because it's this year and that was last year. Even though I just did talk about it, so obviously it's still in my brain. But yeah, I was looking forward to this match. I thought Washington was the better team coming out of it. I don't know if I've changed my mind in that, but we'll see how far Florida gets. If they get past Shanghai and they get into the finals, and you know they seem to have exercised a bunch of demons and all that, except for the one that lives in San Francisco that destroys them every time they play them. You know, I might have a different opinion on them, but it's going to be a rough road for them coming up. Washington's good. I didn't think they were on Dallas level to begin with a hit scan player. Without a hit scan player, they're closer, but at Dallas, they've played 2 flawless matches in this, and I'm not going to go too far into depth into this one, but like I said earlier, Florida looked like they were in for a rough road in the beginning of that match. Washington came and kicked them in the face in that first match on the first capture point, and then Florida just took over from there. They got their usual kick in the face, like I said, and here we are. They moved on. Now, they had a shaky start on Volskaya. They did really well on the defense on point B, which is one of their things, it feels like. And there's a certain point on assault maps with this team where they just put the clamps on and hold the team down for a long period of time. And that kind of gave them a better shot than I thought they were going to have to begin with. But eventually the Justice did win this map, and they should have. They looked flawless on this map, and at least to start, and they did well on their defense. You know, this is a good team, and I said that they were a little overrated. I still think they're kind of a little bit overrated. They look fantastic, though. I think that if they work out some things, they're going to be really good. But then Florida, after that map, they just shut them down. There were points where you kind of thought you could see something from the Justice, but the defense on Florida they just stopped Washington twice cold. And both were map picks one was a map pick by Washington in that, because we did have the map picking thing in this format. So all in all, the Mayhem showed a lot to me in this match. They came out, they were a little shaky, got the control map, and the last two maps are what told the tale of this. They just figured out, via coaching, via whatever, the players, Oj just went off on those last two maps, and to hold them pointless in the last two maps is phenomenal. They basically created a scenario for themselves with an easy win. Albeit the last map on Dorado, it was pretty close. That could have gone either way, but Florida came out in the end. Washington didn't look terrible, but we're in a scenario right now where I didn't think Florida would be. I know some people thought that they were going to win, but as a fan, I'm excited. I'm happy. I'm ready for this Hawaii thing. I want to see them play Shanghai and see what happens there. But Washington shouldn't be ashamed of themselves at all in this. It was not a great showing. They just got some things to work on, and some of the things are coming to fruition that I kind of thought before the year it started. There are some positions and players that aren't quite as good, and they have scenarios where they aren't as good as other teams that are above them, at least that I had above them. But that doesn't mean they're not going to be in the mix. They're here. This is the final round in the NA playoffs to go to the May Melee, so, they're still there. They're there. San Francisco didn't make it. The Gladiators didn't make it. So there's an answer there for them. Are they better than those teams? I want to see more of the other teams too, and more of them as we move on. But we'll talk more about rankings and where we rate teams, like I said earlier in the show, when we get the hero pool set and what patch they're running on, all that. That's going to matter a lot as to where I'm going to stick some teams for June. So let's move on to the last match of the night. Okay, so here we are. Everybody and their mother, including me, I had this as a closer match, but I did before the match started, though. I'm like, Jesus Christ, if Dallas plays like that, there's no way Houston has a chance. And they played like that again. And, Houston, and Dante did play, which I was kind of up in the air about. I didn't see anything about it. And maybe I wasn't scouring social media enough or looking around, but even with Dante in there, now they came out on control and they did an interesting thing. They played Torbjorn, to deal with the flanking and all the weird stuff that Dallas could do. But Dallas had none of that instantly, and then that was over. I think that kind of upset the apple cart a little bit in Houston there to start when they saw that happen. And Piggy and Django are great. They are probably one of the best stories in the league right now. But Fearless did Fearless things once again, and that's becoming a thing now, where he just takes over a match. That guy is on Winston. Find me a better Winston in the league currently. You're not going to do it. And you can throw names out there. You can throw Gouchway. You can throw some of those guys. No, not anymore. It's Fearless. Mag looks good. Oj looks good on occasion. Mono looks decent. They're not holding a candle to Fearless right now. This has become the Fearless show. I don't care. And that's not taking anything away from what Dallas did. Dallas shut them down in every way, shape possible. Everything that Houston was doing really well in the first 2 weeks, they just had none of it. And you could see Houston they could feel it too. You could see it in their face when they were showing them. They were like, oh shit, Dallas is way better than they were when we played them the first time. And it's not that Houston was bad. They were just getting shut down. They were making plays. Django had a couple of big moments. They had some moments where their DPS were doing some things, but it just couldn't happen. Like Happy had a couple of big plays on Tracer and a couple other heroes he was running, but the way Dallas was playing, there was no way they were going to stop them. It felt like any time that something was getting done for Houston, something big would happen. Fearless would do something. Fielder would hit a big bio nade. There would be some scenario that would happen that would just shut Houston down. As far as Houston goes, though, if I'm a Houston fan, I'm ecstatic we got to this point. I know you're Houston fans and you do the thing. Well, here we go again. It's a different team, guys. Maybe it sounds like I did at the end of stage. No, never mind. I was banging on your team like I normally did. I'm not doing that this year. I'm not banging them for this match because they got here. They just ran into a team even though they're playing different stuff. And you can blame the wacky stuff, whatever. Dallas is just better. Unfortunately, if you're a Houston fan. Nothing to be, like I said, nothing to be ashamed of. That doesn't mean you've proven yourself to be better than everyone thought you were in the rankings, including myself and, several other people. They're just a vastly different team. They're coached better than they were with just Harsha last year. I think Jake makes a difference. There's a lot of difference makers on this team. But Dallas just does things right now with these comps that they do that are strange, in quotes. But it's, not to use the term all the time, but the main tank difference in this. Fearless is just phenomenal. And if you look at Hanbin, who has not been getting that much credit this year, he is also playing out of his mind. And he was one of the guys before the season started that I was looking more at than Fearless as being the catalyst to what was going on in this team, because off-tank is such a crucial position, depending on if you're playing Diva or Sigma or whatever you happen to be playing. He is doing things that are low-key winning matches. There was one point where he had a 5-6 man Grav. It was just ridiculous, and it was towards the end of the match too on Gibraltar. And he just sealed things up with that, and it was Gibraltar. It was Blizzard World. It looked like Houston was making a run. Dallas had done like a speed run through. It looked like Houston was catching up, but he put the clamps on him, slowed him down enough to where their time bank got cut to a considerable degree, and they got to breathe for a minute and reset, because Houston was doing a pretty good job of keeping up with Dallas on that. And then Dallas just basically had to get one tick after Houston had a not-so-good attempt at taking the point on Blizzard World, and they just had to get a tick and ended it. Dallas has punched their ticket to Hawaii. I would like to say that I was correct on them being here, but without Eggsy, I thought it was going to be a struggle. I thought they might make the playoffs and have a little run, and we'll just say that they're okay until they get a hit scan player. I was not expecting them to run through the two of the better teams in the league 3-0. They disposed of them like they weren't even there. And that was a telling sign as to what this team can be and is to a certain extent, even without someone who can play hit scan at a high level, and you're washing teams that are fantastic and playing well. And Houston proved themselves to be one of the better teams in the league. Obviously, San Francisco. There's questions about San Francisco, but they beat them handily. Now, we have two teams going from NA that were, in my mind, unexpected. When you saw the teams that were going to be in, you kind of expected Washington-Houston out of this, or Washington-San Francisco. You didn't expect Dallas Mayhem. And I think what this is going to do, this is going to make for a really interesting tournament, which we have a loser's bracket for and everything too. So it's going to be a couple of days of just fun, hopefully mayhem. Seeing these four teams in there, I'm excited. Other than Shanghai, it's fresh faces in a scenario like this, where we got Florida. Yeah, Florida was in tournaments, but they always stumbled somewhere. They had the one May Melee tournament last year where they faced San Francisco and lost. But we have Chengdu, a fresh-faced team. Dallas, Florida. We have Shanghai in there, who I didn't expect to be in there. I thought Philly would be in there, but it's going to be an exciting couple of days coming up. And this year, this tournament format, I'm loving it. I'm sorry. This is just great, fantastic for the league, for viewership, for all of the things that, for people to see how good this league can be. When you have guys playing in pressure situations in big matches, this league looks phenomenal. This game looks phenomenal. This weekend is going to be fantastic. Even when there's a bad match with teams on this level playing in these situations, there's always something to see. And I can't wait for Thursday to get here. But that's going to do it, guys. So that has been the recap of the prelims for the May Melee tournament. Of course, we're going to have something midweek before we get to them for a preview show. stay tuned for that, where I'm going to give you my picks for the Final Four. I'm not going to do a mid thing. I'm going to give you my Melee champion, all that, and then we'll talk about it early next week, and then start focusing on where we're going to go for there's a slight break. Going to have a week off, settle down, figure out what's going on with hero pools, metas, all that kind of stuff. I'll give you a rundown of who I think. I'm going to readjust the power rankings for June, and then we're going to dive into it. May 21st is the first match, so we'll start talking about it, getting ready for the June joust. Please, with the alliterative names. They don't have to be alliterative to be cool. Anyway, that's going to do it, guys. Thank you very much for joining me. Everybody out there who's been supporting me, thank you very much. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. If you're new, thanks a lot for sticking around. This is a longer one than normal. I was rambling, but thanks for stopping by. Please hit a like, hit a subscribe if you're new. Hit that alert bell. I'll tell you when I'm putting up some Overwatch League content. I do it a couple times a week, like I said. And that's going to do it. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody stay safe, have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you on the next one.